Welcome to this explainer. Are you ready to completely bulletproof your next project? Today, we're laying down the foundational blueprint for project risk management by exploring Domain I of the PMI-RMP framework. Whether you are actively hunting for that certification or you just want to stop putting out fires on your projects every single week, mastering risk strategy and planning is exactly where you need to start.
So why should we care? Well, if you're taking the exam, Domain I makes up a massive 22% of it. But well beyond the test, this is the concrete foundation your entire risk lifecycle relies upon. If you don't get the strategy and planning right at the very beginning, every single phase after that, from identifying risks to actually responding to them, will be standing on incredibly shaky ground. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The foundation of risk. 2. Analyzing documents and the environment. 3. Setting thresholds and strategy. 4. Documenting the risk plan. And finally, 5. Leading stakeholder risk activities.
All right, part 1, the foundation of risk. Let's define the absolute bedrock of what we're dealing with before we get into the weeds.
Here's the real kicker. Risk isn't just some looming threat you have to squash. It's actually an opportunity you can capitalize on. We usually hear risk and immediately think, oh no, budget cuts, delays, supply chain nightmares, but the PMI framework demands we look at the bigger picture. Imagine a new piece of tech drops that lets you finish a project 2 months early. That is an uncertain event with a positive effect. Mastering Domain 1 preps you to flip that coin and play both sides.
Moving right along to Section 2, Analyzing Documents and the Environment. Time for some reconnaissance with Tasks 1 and 2.
Task 1 is all about setting the stage. You aren't brainstorming new risks just yet. Actually, scratch that. You're looking backward and sideways first. You're pulling industry benchmarks, scouring lessons learned from past projects, and digging into historical data. And crucially, you need to pin down exactly who is running this analysis. Is it the PM, a dedicated risk manager, a financial controller? You gotta know who's steering the ship.
Then, Task 2 asks you to look out the window. You are scanning both the external and internal project environment. You've got to assess your organizational process assets, or OPAs, and those enterprise environmental factors, the EEFs. Plus, how does your methodology, agile, waterfall, hybrid, shape your risk approach? This is the stage where you really take the temperature of your organization's risk culture. Are they totally risk-averse, or are they absolute trailblazers?
Take a look at how a SWOT analysis is structured here. It brilliantly forces an equal focus on both sides of the equation. You start by looking inward, at your strengths and weaknesses, right? But you don't stop there. You translate those internal traits into actionable external factors. You literally derive specific opportunities straight from your strengths and your specific threats directly from your weaknesses. It's a rock-solid way to guarantee you don't have blind spots on day 1.
All right, Section 3, Setting Thresholds and Strategy. This is where we set the guardrails, translating fuzzy organizational feelings into hard metrics.
Let's kick this off with risk appetite. Basically, this is the broad general willingness of an organization to embrace uncertainty to hit its strategic goals. You can't manage a project's risks until you know the vibe. Are your stakeholders super conservative, or are they ready to take huge leaps for a massive payout?
On the flip side, the risk threshold is a strict, measurable limit. It is your line in the sand. So maybe your org is totally cool with a cost variance of, say, plus or minus 5%. But the second it hits 6%, boom, immediate escalation to upper management.
These two get confused all the time, so let's break it down. Think of risk appetite as how warm you generally like your house. Maybe you just like a cozy, warm environment. That's your attitude. The risk threshold, though, that is the exact number you punch into the thermostat. It's 72 degrees. The threshold is what actually makes the appetite measurable and actionable for your team.
Once those guardrails are locked in, Task 4 is where you formalize the whole strategy. You're establishing the exact tools, metrics, and templates that will run your risk processes. You're identifying major risk categories, and, this is huge, you're stepping into a servant leadership role. You're coaching and mentoring your team on best practices so everyone is singing from the exact same sheet of music.
Next up, Section 4, Documenting the Risk Plan. Time to build the actual rulebook in Task 5.
Task 5 takes everything we've analyzed, everything we've negotiated, and bakes it into a definitive, actionable framework, the Risk Management Plan. This is the ultimate document that outlines exactly who does what, when they do it, and exactly how risks will get prioritized and escalated throughout the life of the project.
To make that plan absolutely bulletproof, you're going to compile some key artifacts. You'll define who does what with a RASI chart, mapping out who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. You'll use a risk breakdown structure, an RBS, to systematically categorize everything so nothing slips through the cracks. And you'll loop in a communication plan so everyone knows exactly how and when risk updates are going out.
Let's see this in the wild with the compact wind turbine project case study. This is a perfect example of scalability. Because they're doing something highly specialized, they decided to use dedicated predictive modeling software for cost escalations. They also tweaked their communication plans so risks are reviewed weekly by the team, but the formal plan only gets a quarterly update. It just goes to show, your risk plan shouldn't be some rigid, dusty binder. You've got to tailor it to the exact reality of your project.
Finally, Section 5, Leading Stakeholder Risk Activities. We're moving from the paperwork to the people.
Task 6 is all about servant leadership. Just look at the action verbs here. Collaborate, engage, tailor, train. You are actively taking steps to bring stakeholders into the fold, building a deep-rooted, shared commitment to managing risk. You're not just barking orders from a spreadsheet, you're building a culture.
By managing attitudes and setting crystal-clear rules of engagement early on, you get everyone on the exact same page. You use that stakeholder analysis we talked about earlier to know exactly who you're dealing with, so you can tailor your education strategy. This is how you truly empower the team. You transform them from passive bystanders into active participants who genuinely care about risk awareness.
So knowing that Domain I lays down the essential blueprint for the entire risk management lifecycle, driving everything from document analysis to setting those strict thresholds, the real test is what happens when you leave the theory behind. So I'll leave you with this. How are you going to champion this proactive culture and empower your stakeholders at your very next kickoff meeting? Think about it, because the success of your project literally depends on it. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and keep building those resilient foundations.